Okay, so when we think about like problem-oriented policing, let's talk a little bit about how it's the same and or different of some different strategies, right? So when we think about like hotspots policing, what do we know about this strategy, right? So we covered it a couple of weeks ago, and what we end up noticing, right, is that it is proactive in the sense that it targets certain agencies or not certain agencies, certain spots in the city, right? So there is a data analysis component that goes into place, right? It's proactive in that police forces are allocated to certain spots, right? So we believe crime is most likely to occur in certain spaces. So we think, that's going to be, good or bad or, indifferent or something like that, right? And, we're going to have them sit there to deter crime in the area. But doesn't necessarily do much more than that, right? So we know, for example, right, that we have them sit there, they're watching, they're waiting, for something to happen. They've been deployed. We've done a proactive thing. We took data, we analyzed it, but it doesn't really do anything long term, right? So when we think about hotspot stuff, right, it is, it reacts to changes, in crime rates, right? So if there's a change in it, we're going to go and deploy officers to those areas, right? And it serves as a deterrent in certain areas, right? But it doesn't do much else. Doesn't do much else, right? Because we're just sending officers there. And, what it does, right, is that, while, yes, we are identifying new places that crime could occur, while, yes, we can change it based off of what crime we're looking to prevent. Yes, we could do all of those things, right? At the end of the day, it's just sending officers there, right? And if you're just sending officers to deter crime, right, this is really sort of like a band-aid, right, that happens, right? You get a cut, a little scab, and then you just go and, you make it, like happen again, right? So you get this little scab, you put a band-aid over it, you heal it, right? Or maybe it's some wound, maybe you put a bandage over it, it's okay for a little bit, but if something doesn't get healed, then it's really, not gonna maybe work so well, right? Something more is needed. Because all it does then is that if you are just continually sending in officers, right, and you're not, doing something to take care of it in the long term, then it's just really not, as efficient as it could be. So when we think about problem-oriented policing, right, there is a shift in focus. So, policing. So what do we do with this, right? So if we see that there is, like problem-oriented policing, right? First, it is designed to be more proactive. So this is, it's supposed to do something other than just responding to calls for service, right? So it's designed to be more proactive and with a focus on problems, right? Where officers, are involved in this process. So what do I mean by that, right? So, it's one thing to have a problem that comes into place, right? Where, like, oh, I have a problem with crime, right? Crime, if we think about our relationship example, earlier, is, kind of vague, right? Yes, that is something, right? But it doesn't tell us a lot of, like, information, right? So usually, from a problem standpoint, right, this part is going to be key. So if we think about things that are problems, right? Yeah, we could have like a one-off instance and that is maybe a temporary problem, but typically we're talking about repeated behavior. So something that keeps happening over and over again, right? So, it doesn't matter like what we do, we keep seeing the same thing happening. So maybe that is like, I know in Dallas for, a couple of years anyway, there was a big thing with people who were stealing air conditioner units and then like selling them on the market. So it was a problem that it kept happening in certain neighborhoods, right? You could also see where we have the same type of offenders, so same offenders. So maybe people are affiliated in a gang or other criminal unit. Maybe it is a group of teenagers or something like that that keeps, like happening over and over and over and over and over again, right? It's the same kind of problem that keeps happening, right? So, we want to do something about this then because, we can't always just like get away with this, right? It's kind of a problem. So, we have this repeat behavior. Maybe it's the same type of behavior. Maybe it happens at certain days and times. We also know that there is, known harm to the community as well that keeps happening, regardless of, what that is, right? And, maybe like, related to this, right, is that we, expect the police to do something about it, which is, often what we do for a lot of like social ills, right? Because we maybe don't have as great of investment in other forms of, social support or social relief. And so we rely on the police to take care of it, right? So we have like a problem with a neighbor. We expect the police to like deal with it, even though they may need some other social services, right? But they can't otherwise be, forced to take. Who knows, right? So, so we expect police to happen it. We have this known harm that's recurring over and over again. Maybe it's the same kind of people, it's the same kind of place, the same kind of crime. Who knows, right? There's a lot of, different ways to think about this particular issue. But we'll call these sufficient for now. So what this tells us then is that if we are finding a problem, like what do we get from, problem identification, right? So if we have like this problem identification, right? Yeah, it's one thing, like, sure, we want to do this, right? But like, why do we want to do this, right? So we have problem identification, right? What we end up doing is that we are, defining the contours of an issue. So we know exactly what is happening. We know what is good, what is bad, indifferent, and so on about this issue, right? We can find specific patterns. So maybe there is, something happening, right? So if it keeps happening in a certain part of a city, whatever that problem is, we can find out like what else is going on, what are the same common characteristics about it, right? And depending on what it is, right? So if we focus on this, right? So we, if we gather information about, what's happening in this area, right? So maybe it's the days, it's the time, it's who's involved. Maybe it's the motive, if that can be discerned. Who knows? Point being is that there's a lot of, different, issues that can be involved, with this, right? The point is that if we have this, right, we can then have a tailor-made solution, right? One that is, designed to handle like the problem that's occurring in place, right? Why does that matter, right? So why do we want to do, a tailor-made solution, right? Well, if you consider, crime prevention in general, right? If we have this like broad umbrella, right? It's coming in. This is not going to look like an umbrella. If we have this, right? Let's say we have, drugs, we have robbery, prostitution, and maybe murder, right? These are just examples. All those are happening. Typically what ends up happening, right, is that we send people to prison, right? We give them a prison sentence, And, like there could be any number of justifications for that, right? Maybe we want to incapacitate people. Maybe we just want to deter crime, deter other people from happening. Maybe we want to deter that individual from committing crime again, and so on. But, it doesn't really, you could arguably like deliver different solutions to this, right? So maybe if it's a drug problem, right? And, we want to arrest people for drugs, how dare they use drugs? Maybe it's better if we give them rehab, right? We know that maybe they just have an addiction, maybe there's some emotional trauma, they're using drugs to cope with that kind of thing, who knows? If it's robbery, maybe like this is a financially driven kind of thing, right? Or, people are just being stupid and like flashing cash. And, they're maybe not as being as judicious with their materials as they could be, right? Who knows, right? If it's a prostitution, maybe it's a sex trafficking issue and these people just need to be rescued, in some different way. They were, maybe they're in some form of like sexual bondage that, because they got, taken up by a gang. So maybe it needs to be delivered to quit the gang practice, make people more aware, and so on. And with murder, maybe we think like prison is going to be better because you're just going to lock them up forever and because you're a danger to society. The point of this, right, is that if we, tailor make these solutions, right, they have a better design and hopefully anyway have a better outcome, right? So when we have, POP then, problem oriented policing, and we identify a problem, a specific problem, right, and we know details about it, right, this is going to lead to a better solution because we have, better information, we understand the nuances behind it, and we can do something about it that may or may not be related to policing in general, right? So with that, we'll